Hi, you guys. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Allie Wilkins. I have a special guest today, Jacqueline, and we're like super good friends. And so we've been talking about this subject for a long time. And now both of us have done this particular thing that this video is about, which is stopping smoking weed, um, which is something like we both have experienced a lot of resistance with, and also like a lot of people not understanding it or not getting it. So we're just going to have a super real open conversation about our experience doing that because I think it's helpful to hear from other people, especially when you're in the position of like, this is really hard. How do I do this? Because I was definitely in that position for many years of trying to quit and not being able to. And I haven't been smoking for 3 years now. And it's not that I'm opposed to like, you know, I could definitely enjoy a joint or something now and then, but I'm not in the daily habit of it like I used to be. So Jacqueline, do you want to introduce yourself a little and just like share where you're at?
Yes, yes. My name is Jacqueline. I am happy to be back on this channel. I just love how every conversation we have is just so unique and different by this point. And yeah, I mean, I was just basically a daily smoker since I was 19 years old, and it was something that I literally needed to function. So I've taken breaks in the past, but never with this much intentionality and also never with this much rigidity. Like I have not had any cannabis for like what 229 days now or something like that. And when I've quit in the past, it's always been like, it was 6 months, but I ate an edible in between, but I mostly gave it up. And so this has been a really new experience for me, like completely cutting it out. And yeah, like learning to essentially not use it as a crutch for my daily function anymore. So
This convo is going to be so juicy. I'm like, we have so much to say. So the first
yeah.
thing before we go into it is just like, there is no judgment from either of us about cannabis itself. Like, we love it. We like, but there's no judgment whatsoever. There's just like what I found when I was trying to quit was like no one is really talking about the fact that smoking weed is super addictive. Like the plant itself might not be, biologically addictive, and that's what everyone says. Like you can't get addicted to it. It's impossible. And I just had so much resistance towards like when I was saying, no, I have like a problem with this. And
Yeah.
for me, like you said, you've been smoking since 19. For me, it was very similar. Daily habit. For both of us, we functioned very well with it. Like I felt super creative and productive when I smoked. But the problem for me was I couldn't control myself. Like if it was in the house, like I wanted to smoke. And also like it wasn't making me like lazy or doing nothing. Like I was very creative and productive and had so much fun working when I was high. But the issue I had personally was like feeling like I couldn't control myself. And at the time I was with a partner and he had a very different relationship with it. Like he could see it in front of him and not smoke for days. And for me, that was not the case. And he's like, you're smoking all of the weed. Why are you like, just don't smoke so much? I'm like, if only it was that easy. Like, that's not my experience. And I heard a friend say that the spirit of cannabis itself, it's like a maternal spirit, but it's kind of the energy and the wounded aspect. It can be like a mother that's like really overbearing or territorial or um, like kind of wants to possess you. Like you think about the mom with the son, maybe who like doesn't want to let her son go and she's like showing up to all the dates or something. I don't know.
Smothered. Have you seen that show? Smothered.
That's the energy. I haven't seen the show. Um, but it kind of had that effect on me because I wasn't using it in any sort of ceremonial way. It was a full-blown addiction. And no one really understood that. Like at the time, this was in 2020, but I mean, I tried to stop from like 2017 on, and just felt really bad about myself because I couldn't. And people didn't understand. They're like, "What's the problem? It's a plant." Like, but it has a hold on me. I don't like that feeling. So, do you want to share anything about like your vibe around that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely allowed myself to be gaslit slash gaslit myself into convincing myself that it wasn't addictive for an extremely long time. Um, I hadn't until I received this like specific call from God or psychic download to quit. Previously, I hadn't wanted to quit. So, therefore, I really never tried and never felt bad about myself or anything like that. But I definitely let those messages get in my head that it wasn't addictive and everything is fine. Like, this isn't negatively impacting my health whatsoever. This isn't negatively impacting any area of my life. I, was very much like you. Like, I finished my bachelor's and my master's degree completely stoned. I worked a corporate job and was really successful completely stoned. I built my business completely stoned. Like, there wasn't for me that felt like a reclamation of, I'm calling back in this like lazy stoner archetype. Like, I was able to accomplish so much, like basically being high 24/7, and that was a really deeply rooted part of my identity. And usually when there is like an addiction, or if you're in like, you're in an addiction, you are like extrapolating that part from your identity. So I didn't need any further proof that it was addictive after I started experiencing withdrawals. If something, and this is where, okay, I'm not a scientist and I can't have an opinion on this or whatever, but it's like, if you're not addicted to something, you don't experience physical withdrawals from it. My withdrawals weren't from a habit. That might have been part of it. Maybe like 20% of it was, yeah, I'd go outside every day at 2 p.m. and light up a joint. I have to break that habit. But I'm someone that I'm very used to breaking habits of mine. I'm very used to building new habits and being like cultivating new habits. I pay attention to my dopamine responses. TikTok, when I deleted TikTok, that was a dopamine withdrawal that I physically experienced. And, releasing weed was something that was extremely similar, but even more physical as far as like what the withdrawals were like. Yeah, it's just interesting how that's always been the messaging, that it's not addictive. But think of how many women we've talked to, or just how many people that they say it's not addictive, but they also need to smoke it before they do any task, before they go to bed, right when they wake up. So, and they can't stop. So, at what point do we like again just admit that it is an addiction? If you can't stop, it is an addiction, right?
Yeah.
So,
For me, it wasn't so much physical withdrawals, but I was definitely like super agitated. For me,
yeah.
it was more emotional. Like I realized like, oh, I was like, oh, it would be nice to have a bong hit right now. That was like my method of choice. And um it was multiple times throughout the day, and when I stopped doing it, I started noticing the urge to do it. Like, when I did it in those moments, I would feel so much agitation because in the moments that I was smoking, that the weed was covering it up and sort of like weed, for anyone watching who doesn't know this, when you're smoking, it takes you into the fourth dimension. So this is why it's good for pain relief. And it just kind of like lightens the mood, right? So you don't have to really deal with whatever's happening on the physical 3D level. And so when used appropriately, or when used like ceremonially or with respect to the plant, can be beautiful and amazing. But when we do it habitually, like I was seeing, okay, I'm overriding the sensation of agitation. And for me, it was also really, really closely connected to dulling my spiritual gifts. And like since I was a child, I've had really high sensitivity, but I think that I didn't really realize that I was actually using weed most of the time. This was not conscious at all. When I stopped, I realized this. It was dulling my spiritual sensitivity completely. And one of the biggest things I noticed after I stopped smoking was like my sensitivity became like 1,000 times stronger. And I was able to just sent so much more, which at first was very confronting and was very like a little bit scary in some scenarios when I would see, and this would not happen for everyone. I just like mediumship gifts run in my family. So that's something that started to come in. And I was like, oh, I remember seeing this stuff as a kid and it freaked me out. I remember seeing some of this. And when I started smoking, I was in college. So, I was like drinking on the weekends all the time and like wasn't really in the space of like developing my psychic or spiritual gifts. But when I stopped smoking, I really realized like, whoa, weed was actually literally like um putting me in a haze that I wasn't perceiving so much of what I actually was able to, because I didn't feel safe accessing those spiritual gifts then. And what got me to finally stop smoking weed was I really wanted to study in the Akashic records and to do an Akashic record training. And you can't go into the records if you've had any substances in your system. So I had to stop. And then when I stopped with that, I was like, I could really see, okay, first of all, there's an enormous amount of agitation here. And I feel like that probably lasted like a month. Like I only had to really sit with that for like a month and then it kind of dissipated. Um, but then I started seeing all of the spiritual gifts really come alive and awaken. And I was like, I don't know that I need this anymore. Where like I had quit before one time for 6 months when I was doing this personal development program. We had to give up one vice for this program. And so I gave up weed, but it was like the first hour that I could that the 6 months was done. I was right back to the old habit. And this was the only thing that got me to stop because I realized like what I was actually doing on a spiritual level when I was smoking all the time, like what was actually happening in my field. And for me, I've noticed there's in the last 3 years, there's probably been like 5 or 6 times that a friend has come over and we've like shared a joint or something. And I noticed that it sticks with me for days because now my perception is just so much more tuned in and like precise. I can feel it in my auric field for days. And I'm like, it's really fun when we're smoking, but I don't like that feeling afterwards. So for me, I'm just kind of at the point now where it's like, I cannot have it at home because oh, and also here's another thing I forgot to say. Jacqueline knows this, but um, I was dating someone who would give me these vape pens and he was like, you just like love it. Just here's a vape pen. And I noticed the same exact habit with the vape pens, which by the way are like way worse for you than smoking weed because there's all these other chemicals. And so I noticed the same pattern of like, well, let me just finish the vape pen. Like, I'm just going to smoke it till I finish the vape pen and then, like, I won't do it anymore. And then there would be a physical withdrawal somewhat because there's other chemicals mixed in. And it's not like, and Jacqueline, you always talk about this, and I'll let you talk in a second because I've been talking for like an hour. Um, Jacqueline always talks about like the chemicals that are coming into the plant that's being sold in dispensaries versus like a loving farmer growing it themselves, right? And all these pharmaceutical companies starting to get involved in like owning these farms and like what are they putting into it? So my point is with the vape pens, I noticed it's the same exact habit. And for me, I'm just kind of at the point that's like, okay, this is I have an addictive quality. So it can only be if I do it, which I will every now, like every blue moon, like a few times a year, probably. Like if someone gives me one edible or like it has to be dosed out and I cannot have access to it. Like I can't have an eighth or an ounce in my house, like because then I'll go right back into that addictive habit, which I'm like, this is so annoying.
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually did it. I did it very different than that, where for the first like 3 or 4 months, I had a jar of like amazing homegrown stuff just sitting like 3 feet away from me on the couch. And I
Yeah.
would smell it and I would like see the wraps sitting there, like all the wraps I used to buy just sitting there. And that was like my way of like desensitizing myself to it because I knew I just I had to like have that level of self-control. My relationship with like things previously, whether it's like weight loss or whatever, have been very like extreme. Like I will do low carb for a month and lose like 14 pounds and then go back, like that's always been my relationship with things, which made my hair fall out. And so I just knew I had to like desensitize myself to being around it so that I would like have that level of self-control. So it's interesting like hearing your perspective, but honestly, you quitting, I've told you this like a thousand times, but you quitting was like the motivator. Like you gave me the confidence to like that I could actually do it if I wanted to, because I knew that we had like similar habits in that sense, as far as like how often we smoked or how much we smoked.
Mhm.
So I just want to say thank you for that. And then like the ripple effect of that is now like people finding my content on Instagram or like me sharing about being weed free and now they're stopping. And, I think that it's just good for everyone to evaluate our relationship with that substance every once in a while. And especially if, again, if you're not someone where you're using it for like a specific health issue, or you're not doing it just to like be okay in your body or feel okay in your body. For us, this was a very elective hobby. It wasn't like integral to us like being okay. And yeah, your comment about like the chemicals and everything, it's actually so much deeper than the pesticides and the things that they use to actually grow it, which if anyone has been or they know anything about cultivating or horticulture, growing marijuana, it's an extremely delicate process. And but it's deeper than that, to the fact that the weed today or the marijuana today is so hybridized. So 20 years ago, it's the same thing that happened to wheat. So if you found that you've also had a wheat intolerance come through in the last 10 years, or like my great grandmother who, used to own a bakery, but towards the last 10 years of her life couldn't tolerate wheat anymore. That's because all of the wheat today is a hybrid of a hybrid of a hybrid of a hybrid. And it's the same thing with the marijuana. We're so far away from like the OG strains and the original strains, how the plant is naturally supposed to be. Now we're consuming a hybrid of a hybrid of a hybrid, right? It's the same thing with a banana. Like that's not what a banana looks like. Bananas they don't look like that, right? That's the hybridized banana. Broccoli, that's not even a real, that's not, you don't find wild broccoli, right? So there's like when you learn actually about plant toxins and how plants actually create toxins for our thyroid, or different or like really sensitive organs that we have, it makes sense that a lot of people are having kind of like a, they people experiencing like marijuana induced psychosis. I mean, all you have to do to, I think, really open your eyes to what the hybridization of marijuana is doing is go to a dispensary and see the people that are purchasing weed, because a lot of people are, they're supplementing other addictions with marijuana, and it's evident in that, and it's evident that it actually does something to our brain. And again, no judgment. I would, if I hadn't made this commitment to myself, I would be rolling a really fat blunt right now. So like I plan to do that after my year is up. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah, it's not that this has to be like a permanent life choice. It's just
Yeah.
interesting to notice if you're someone who is smoking all the time, which is a huge amount of people. Um, and everyone has a totally different relationship with it. But if you're someone who's smoking all the time, it's like, huh, what's it like to not have that in my system 24/7? Like, what would I maybe notice about myself? Or particularly if you're someone who's interested in like going into, the inner paths of self-work and shadow work and looking at that stuff, like, what am I using this to perhaps mask? Or what are the other things coinciding with my use of weed that I might not be totally conscious of. And just like ask yourself. And then when you notice, like Jacqueline was saying before, when it's hard to not do something, that's when you know, like, oh, there's some sort of like, even like a cord to this that might, like a cord to another person, like a cord to this plant, or my particular usage of it that's not completely healthy for me in this moment. And just like evaluating that.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, like I didn't experience I was hoping for that, just like based off of hearing your experience, the like awakening of the spiritual gifts. Like I was just like, yes, I'm ready. The dreams did come back because, the thing about, and that's why I initially started smoking weed when I was 17 was because I couldn't sleep. And yeah, like you, like as a child having like, there's a man in the closet. I'm like picking up on like, the spirit that used to live in this house before my mom bought the house, right? Like all of those kind of experiences that I realized as I got older, I was like, yeah, no, we're not ready for that level of information right now. I'm not ready for that level of prophetic dreams right now. Like, let's just kind of like hush this up. I got to go to work. Like, I have to work 40 hours a week. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. But so and then in that state for me, only the really important dreams would come through, like a really strong message would come through my weed filled days.
Mhm.
And so when I stopped, the intense dreams started back up, and I recognized that that was the pattern that I would usually go back to smoking, is because I didn't want all those dreams. Like I felt exhausted when I woke up because of so many dreams. But then eventually I noticed I would wake up so much easier in the morning. Like I wouldn't be dragging. I could wake up and actually be alert because I wasn't still in that fog. And then I had also had um a woman that I was working with that did like some psychic sessions and Reiki and things like that would comment on how she needed to dust my third eye off all the time, or there was always smoke around my crown and my third eye. And I kind of brushed that off too, where I'm like, oh, made excuses for it. So yeah, I think it's interesting because our experiences were so different in quitting and like the results that have happened since. But um yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
But I'd love to ask you the question because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I use weed to like tap into my inner gifts or to my spiritual.
yeah.
So what has your experience been like? Because I think you were someone who said that as well. What's your
Yeah.
experience been like connecting with your intuition without having that in your system?
Yeah, for me it feels much more it's the only way to really describe it is more of a pure channel. I might not have as many epiphanies or realizations or as many like spiritual experiences or psychic experiences, but that my accuracy is 99%. You know what I mean? Whereas before felt like I was always getting something, but I would get at least, a little bit of like weed induced paranoia. There's when you're moving into other dimensions like that with any substance, it's not going to be 100%, I guess. So again has just been my experiences. It's more pure. It's not as dopamine fueled. It's not as manic, and it's more of a grounded. Then I know when I am receiving something, like it's real as fuck, and I'm not sitting there questioning myself after my high comes down. Something else that would happen to me that I noticed would impact my business, because like you, I really enjoyed like working while I was high. It helped my focus, helped my creativity. That's what I hear the most from people is, well, when does your creativity come back? When did that come back? And I think, being creative sober is actually like the ultimate creative challenge. But it's where did it see, this is what happens when I quit too, is that I like forget what I'm talking about. Like I feel like I used marijuana to cover up a lot of like ADHD or like focus things. And so now my focus gets marijuana helps you like really zero in on your focus, I think. Um Sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought.
That's actually, haven't really thought about that, but I feel like it took me a while for focus to come back and like
Yeah.
I definitely align with your experience of like the pure channel because
Yeah, yeah,
I felt like my channel before, well, first of all, mine was just really, really blocked. Um,
yeah,
that was like active, like the smoke was actively blocking things out. But it's kind of, I used to use this example when I would talk about it. Like, if you think about literally just like an open channel, like a big tube, if you put like lit incense under it, there's literally smoke like moving through this entire pipe But if it's just straight, open, wide, like full accessibility, you're I feel like the and an aspect, this is just something I'm like feeling like we have to also train ourselves how to be with that. Um, it's like learning how to use that gift in a different way. But it's interesting because both of us have had like we're so similar just in personality and like what we do and so many different things, but our experiences are different. And like for me, I didn't the creativity I don't think was has really been an issue. Um, for me, it was more of like a and I'm just kind of hearing and like how you're talking about this. For me, it was a little bit more of a compulsive thing. Like if like it can't be in front of me or I'll like go right back to it. Like it's full on addiction vibes. Um, whereas for you, it doesn't feel like it has that strong of a hold. Like you're able to sit in front of it and be fine. Um, and for me, it's like thinking about if when I meet another partner, like if I was to live with someone, like I couldn't be with someone who has weed in the house or things like that. Um, so there's like for you guys listening, there's different variants of where you might be at, where your experience will be totally different. But I think it's so worth just, giving it a shot and like seeing what happens, seeing how it's different, especially if you're like us and you've been doing this since you're 18, 19 years old. Like I've been doing this since I didn't live with my parents in the house and I had my own apartment at 19 or 20. And so it's like all that time, like who are you with an open channel? Who are you without that haze? Like, or for me, like the pull of this governing your life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because it's like I know for me too, it's I still feel even like 230 days later, I still feel like I'm almost like building back like my neurons or something like that in my brain. Like for the first 2 months, I was so disorganized, and I was used to like creating lists and things like that. Well, now that type of activity is like completely mandatory for me. But it's also because I'm not so on guard. Like my adrenaline has calmed down, like my cortisol in my body has calmed down, and I'm not like hyper aware of things anymore. And so I'm like more relaxed in this state. And that sounds really like counterintuitive too, because we think like marijuana helps relax you, but test your blood pressure and test your heart rate 10 minutes after you smoke. And you'll see, and then the next morning, test your blood pressure and heart rate again and see how much lower it is. Um, I realized I was just in this like hyper elevated, like very almost like survival or adrenaline fueled state. And that made me so aware of like all of the tasks I needed to complete and making sure nothing fell through the cracks and like all of that kind of stuff. So that's definitely been like an intentional thing for me. Um, Along with the building back the creativity of actually sitting down and creating. My relationship with art was completely 100% based off of my relationship with weed. So building back that relationship too. It's just like there's so many things that it's almost like you're learning yourself again. That's how I felt. Because if you think about it, for me, that's 12 years of almost daily use. And, at the height of what I was smoking like close to an eighth a day. So, you know,
Yeah. Do you know what your Ayurvedic doshas are? This seems totally different, but I think this is actually interesting to think about.
I don't even know what you just said. What is it?
Okay, so I want you guys to comment. This is just something I just thought about. If you guys, I'll say what it is in a second, but if you know your doshas, put them in the comments because I think that this could also have a relation to maybe our experience. And I feel like we might have similar doshas, just like knowing you. But okay, so in Ayurveda, okay, so Ayurveda, step one. This is like an Eastern Indian
Yeah.
tradition, ancient science for anyone who
Yeah.
doesn't know about that. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, and they have all these different protocols um, that are like medicine, working with our bodies instead of so much like our medical system today, the Western system. it's rooted more in looking at the root of the problem. But they divide people. Okay, I might be not saying this perfectly. So if you're an expert in Ayurveda, don't judge. But there are three different doshas. So these are three different like categories. So we have different doshas for our body and our spirit, and maybe something else, maybe our mind also. But let's just look at the physical body. So everyone falls into a blend of these three doshas. So they're kapha, pitta, and vata. And so you can kind of tell what people's doshas are based on what they look like. So for example, people who are mostly vata, which is a lot of like air energy, usually are very lean. Usually they're like very skinny, they have bigger eyes. Um, and there's also like implications with your skin or with health issues, like things like this. People who are pitta, this is more fire energy. They're usually more athletic. They have more muscle. They're on an emotional level more like I don't want to say angry, but they're more passionate. That's the right word to use. They're more passionate. And then kapha is more um people who are a little bit like it's easier for them to put more weight on. They're not super lean. They tend to be like a little bit overweight. Um, they're more slow paced. They're really in the rhythm of like the earth. Um, Whereas Vata people, for example, could be a little bit more like flighty or a little bit more fast paced or like have tendencies with anxiety and things like that. So it's really interesting when you look at all the different implications of it. So everyone has a blend of each of these three. So I'm like, for example, I'm mostly kapha pitta. And so the kapha element, I can like they all have shadow sides. The kapha can like if it's imbalanced, I will get super sluggish, super groggy, super lethargic. And so for this is my point about relation to the weed. When I was smoking, it would enhance the kapha, which I already have a lot of that in my system. So then I was just like super sluggish. Like I would eat a lot more sugar, which also would contribute to that. I would be just like sitting and doing nothing all day. Versus for someone who's vata or pitta, I'm just kind of curious. Like, I wonder what the implications of that would be because you know how some people get like super paranoid with weed? I feel like that might be more vata types. And like for pitta, it might actually be really good for pitta to help like balance their fire. And I feel like you're probably kapha pitta as well, just from knowing you.
It sounds like it, yeah, because we
Yeah.
have similar energy in terms of, like, how much energy we actually have, so, like, socially and otherwise. Yeah, that's really interesting. So, yeah, the busybodies, like, I wanna hear from the busybodies, like, how does that relationship work? Because, yeah, maybe it does, and, I've had that experience too, like, a lot of people's first time smoking weed was with me because when they were curious about it, they would like come to me like I'm their marijuana shaman or something like that. And so I remember one of my friends who was like very like ADHD, very like hyper, like bouncing off the walls kind of energy. She smoked and it like had like completely the opposite effect that it would have had on me. It like made her just kind of really neutralized, and it's almost like she didn't feel it. Like she didn't have the experience of feeling high. It just more just like kind of leveled her out. Um so yeah, that's a very interesting. And with the sluggishness, I just noticed that it would again like instead of my energy feeling like this all the time, now my energy just kind of feels much more stabilized. The way I wake up, but also just throughout the day, like not hitting this low, not hitting this like come down of feeling tired all of the time. And yeah, it's really interesting how that works. The it's not like an alertness. It's more like yeah, being less sleepy. And I think that also with my experience stopping weed was right before I had the realization that I needed like a really big dental procedure. So I would have had to stop. I would have had to stop smoking anyways, but I wouldn't have noticed the impact on my energy as much if I would have been smoking throughout the whole process, because I felt my energy come back a lot when at 2 months. It was actually 80 days after I stopped smoking. The 81st day I felt a ton of my energy come back. Like I felt like it was finally out of my system. Um but then after I got my infected teeth removed, that's where I was like, "Oh, this was really the problem. Like this was actually the problem with my energy, but I would have never been able to tell if I hadn't released this substance first."
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So put in the comments what your if you have any thoughts about the Ayurvedic thing with your experience with weed, because I'm just like curious about that.
Yeah,
Um,
me too now. I'm gonna have to look that up more.
yeah, and there's this like side note, there's also like foods you're supposed to eat to make sure you balance these different doshas are balanced. There's like different things that are good for your skin, or there's a whole world. I mean, literally it's an ancient science. It's really intricate and really interesting. But one of the things that I actually just remembered that kind of showed me how much weed was doing in a way that wasn't healthy for me. So I had stopped smoking for probably a month, and this was like a super dramatic time period in my life. Like I was splitting up with my fiance that we had been together for 8 years. We were I just have to like paint this picture for you guys. So
You were going through it.
going through it, but like this particular picture. So um I was about to move across the country. And so he was going to like he was going on a family trip or something for like a week, and he was moving into this new apartment. And so all of our stuff was in his apartment. And I was kind of like, I was staying there for while he was gone. He was just like letting me stay there. And I was going through some of the stuff, selling some stuff, and then kind of separating my stuff from everything. And I dropped him off at the airport and then went to his house, and it was like full of all of our stuff boxes, like 8 years of being together. And I went in and I had a panic attack, and I've never had a panic attack before. And literally this like little apartment is full of so many boxes, and then just like, holy fuck, this is like all of my stuff. And I'm about to move across the country and I have no idea what I'm doing. What am I doing with my life? And just like all this stuff. And so I start digging through. I was like, where's the bong? Like I haven't smoked in a month. And I was like, I have to have weed right now. Like I'm having a legitimate panic attack. Like I need it. So I was digging through all of this stuff trying to find where he had purposely hid it from me because I asked him to. And so I found it and I smoked. And literally within like 1 minute, it was like the entire panic attack went away. And I was like, this is like this is a problem. Like I'm grateful for it in this moment that I had it, so I didn't have to like go to the hospital or something. But I was like, I was just freaking the fuck out, and I smoked once and it went completely away, and now I'm like, oh, everything is fine. And I was like, this is showing me how much one bong hit could like override my emotional state. And if like this is what we're talking about, if there's medicinal purpose, like if you are in a huge amount of pain and you physically need it, like we're not talking to this group of people. This is
Yes.
not applicable.
That was not me. Okay, no.
Yeah. But I was like, whoa, this is just showing me how much people can avoid their emotions really with it. Because I just saw in a 2-minute period where I went from like, I am about to call the ambulance to I'm completely fine. Let's watch a movie and chill. There's no problem.
Yeah. Well, because it just like blasts all of the dopamine. It's like an orgasm of dopamine in your brain. I mean, I think that's literally what's happening. And so it's like impossible not to feel good in that moment, because it's like you just ate like the best food on the entire planet, had sex, sneezed a couple times. Like it's like you did all of those things like all at once. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. You were talking
Yep.
about before too how you noticed you feel more like steady throughout the day, whereas before it was kind of more like up and down. And I can relate to that too. But for me, something I've noticed just like for now, not having it for years, I noticed that I'm also way more attuned to like the cyclical process of nature. Like I can feel astrological shifts way more deeply. I'm also like paying a little bit more attention to it than I was then, but I can feel like, for example, so with Western astrology, I'm a projector. And so um projectors have cycles of energy where you have really, really low energy for a while. This could be for months. And then you have big spurts of energy. And I can tell like now so much more clearly when I'm getting a big influx of energy. I'm like, oh, like my channel is like vibrating right now. Like there's a lot of high powered frequencies coming in. Before I never was able to tune into any of that. I couldn't feel it. Because it's for me, it was like everything was just so dulled. Everything was so just like flatlined. And also myself, I'm like, I was like so dull and boring. Like, I don't know if my friends would say that about how I was then, but I feel like I'm able to be so much more expressed now because I'm not like, there's not this cap over my enthusiasm, I think some. There's, you know what I mean? Like, there's not this cap over something. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah. No, I feel that for sure, like, especially just, creating, content or, like, being visible on the internet. I feel much more liberated, and I don't second guess myself as much. Like, my confidence is, like, on 100 now. I'm not, like, creating something and then being like, "Ooh," like, again, second guessing myself, like, "Did I create that from
Mm,
a different place?" Like, when you're not in the same mindset of when you created it, it's like it's like your self is kind of fragmented, or your creations are kind of fragmented. Your whole life is fragmented, I noticed that a lot. Talking to, like, the boring part, I noticed that a lot with how much time I had back in my day. Like, oh, I could go to yoga at 5 p.m.
yeah.
because I wasn't, like, stoned out of my mind. Like, wow. Like, it sounds, when you're in the middle of it, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but how many yoga classes did I actually cancel because I started smoking at noon, right? So I just have so much more time to do things. I have time to talk to people more. I have time to just, like, be more present, I feel. So,
Hmm. Yeah. The dream thing too is so real because your dreams get so much more vivid. Because again, it's kind of like that cloudiness just clogging up your fields.
well, deeper than that, it's actually, and it's so funny because my mom has known this and has been saying this for, like, probably a decade. And now Joe Rogan and all the people are starting to talk about it. But when you are high all the time, you don't go into REM as much. You don't have a REM cycle. So it's almost like the dreams get, like, bottlenecked and, like, backed up. Um, so it's interesting that, like, science is starting to come out with that now. So, like, yeah, that's, like, the biggest perk, like, of all of the things I miss and I, like, still have cravings and all of that. How deep I sleep and how much more rested I feel is, like, something it would be really difficult to give up again, because when you're high, you don't go into REM. You actually don't get really good sleep, which is why you feel like you need to sleep more. I felt like I needed to sleep like 9, 10 hours every single night, but actually it was because I was just getting, like, this much REM. Whereas now, I can totally feel it. Like, I get way more REM. So look it up. I definitely did not make that up. It's a thing
I
now.
believe you. I believe you. I also sleep 9, 10 hours a night now. So just throwing that in there for anyone who
Yeah.
struggles with sleep. Um, and also just I feel like I don't know how long we've been talking, but 45 minutes. Okay. I feel like we also have to just throw in a little bit of like conspiracy vibes because like that's just like
Yes.
here. Like,
I'm available for that.
yeah. Also, you have to think about like now marijuana is being legalized everywhere. And so it's like for me, it's kind of like now that the government's on board, like why are they all of a sudden on board with all of this? Like it's a little bit fishy. Pharmaceutical companies are buying up so many weed farms. And like also just as a side of that, taking away so much small business from people who have been growing this, maybe illegally or maybe not, for a long period of time. Um, and like, what are the implications of like that? Like, why is it all of a sudden allowed? So think about our water is poisoned, our food is poisoned, like all of these things are poisoned. So if something's getting commodified or something's now like approved of by the government, and also so much of that money is going to taxes or going to I forget what I'm trying to say with this, but like um it's just like questionable to me. It's like I don't know that I want to be involved in it necessarily now that the government's hands are like, here you go, eat my candy. Like
Have some weed, kids. Yeah, exactly. Talk about backpedaling on a narrative. Um, yeah, the tax thing definitely gets me for sure. But yeah, we have to question anything that's being handed out like that. We have to question anything that the government is co-signing to that degree. I do think decriminalization was positive, but that's kind of just something else, to really consider in your relationship to it, because what is the benefit of weed being legalized to a violent organization that wishes to control millions of people? Would we be easier to control if we were just kind of stoned all the time? Like, would that be easier for them? If we're just stoned and happy all the time. Got to think about it.
mhm. Yeah. So, and like living in LA when I was there, it's like there's billboards everywhere. Like let's see, I was there probably for about 2 months, and then I moved back to the East Coast. And the 2 months I was there, it was like, this is everywhere. Like it's hard for me to not think, like I'm already trying to not think about it because I'm addicted to this. But then there's billboards everywhere. Or like I lived in downtown LA at this time. And there's a dispensary literally on every corner of the street. Like it's so normalized, and not that it shouldn't be normalized, but like it's just everywhere. It's like if there's a person on every street with heroin, like you're probably more likely to try heroin. You're probably more likely to, when you know that you shouldn't, go get it. So just like some other things to think about. Is there anything that you would want to tell someone who's like watching this and they're like, I am addicted, like I can't stop. Like what would you tell them if they are in the space where they want to quit, but they're like a little bit insecure about it?
Yeah, so after I quit, I started a weed-free Voxer chat, just like a free thing for us to get together and all contemplate. And, there was still people in there that were really struggling with quitting, even after like making the commitment to do so. And, I think that it's like the encouragement I would give people is that it's really a test of your mental strength and your mental fortitude. And we live in the type of environment and society today that you cannot allow yourself to be controlled by anything. And it's like, it's like, this is for the future, for where we're going spiritually, for where the earth is heading. We need people that are, um, like mentally strong, and this is a good test for yourself on how mentally strong you can be. So, whether you do it like Allie, where you just don't have it around, or you do it like me, where you keep it around to intentionally like trigger yourself, I think whatever the choice is, you have to make the choice that is right. Deep down, I knew it was time. I mean, I had so many signs. My bong broke. A mysterious gust of wind in mild weathered Arizona, where it's sunny 300 days a year, um, blew on through and broke my bong, right? So it's like there's so many signs, and like deep down, I knew it was time to let it go, not just cut back. Because when I would cut back, I would cut back for a little bit and then it would just like inch back up. So deep down, if it's the right move for you to make or not. And most people don't fully make that commitment to themselves because they're scared of failure. So the worst that you can do is fail. And I think like it's just about getting back on that horse and just like, again, just developing that solidarity within yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful response. I think I would just add in like, just be really real with yourself. And you kind of spoke to this too. Be really real with yourself, and like you can do hard things. We just have to really commit to it. And like set up the environment so that it supports you in that. Like if you live with someone, I mean, I would say like ask the people you live with not to smoke unless you're more like Jacqueline and you know that you can do it even if they're smoking around you. But for me, that was like I told my partner, I told my partner, I don't really remember exactly the situation because we weren't together that much longer. Maybe for 6 weeks we were spending time together when I had stopped or something. And I was like, you cannot smoke around me. Like I have to quit. And he was really supportive of me doing that. But I was like, here's what I need for me to be able to be successful. Like set the environment right and figure out what it's going to take for you to get really serious. For me, it was like doing the Akashic record training. I had to stop. I could not be a part of it. And that felt so much more important, like to my soul, was like, I can give this up. This is like part of my destiny awakening. Like it's a pretty big deal. So find out what aspect of your destiny is calling you. And anything that can get you really aligned, like even if you hired someone and paid them just to be able to see what it's like without it in your field.
Mm.
I do think it's better if you can just do it on your own because then you might go right back to that habit. However, like if that's going to help to get you to break the habit and get out of it, because it's not that this has to be a permanent life. You're never going to do it again. It's just like, what happens if this isn't in my field for a year? What would that be like?
Yeah, that was my original, like the call that I heard was give it up until your birthday. Cause the question I had asked was, actually, ironically, like, what can I do to like reignite my creative channel? And it was give up weed until your birthday. So it was about like 65 days until my birthday. And I'm like, okay, I can do that at least. By the time I got around to my birthday, like when I had first started the first couple of weeks, I'm like, oh, I can't wait till my birthday so I can smoke. When I finally got around to my birthday, I'm like, I can't undo. This was the hardest 2 months ever. Like I'm not, it's only getting easier from here. I can't just like stop now. So I think also just like setting small goals for yourself, even if it's just like 30 or 60 or 90 days, and then just like see how you feel then and reevaluate then. Yeah, because I've done that a couple times, like caffeine, gave up caffeine for like 9 months. I've done that with alcohol too, although I don't feel the same addiction as I do with caffeine or weed. Caffeine was by far the hardest. But yeah, it's like set those small goals and then just like reevaluate and see how you're feeling then. And I bet you'll feel so much better that you don't want to undo the progress that you made at that point.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions for us, you can put them in the comments that we didn't like touch on. Is there anything else you want to say, Jacqueline, or anything you feel like
No,
we
that feels complete. I'm excited for this video to go out.
yeah.
Also, Snoop Dogg quitting apparently was bullshit. So I'm like, oh,
I mean,
you.
it doesn't really seem aligned with its whole like brand.
I know, but think of the collective impact that would have had. Like, oh, he quit. Like, just think about how many people would actually be questioning things if they like followed through with that. I
Um,
feel like that was just like a really terrible marketing. At the very least, it was really terrible marketing. So, yeah, that's all.
I didn't even really see very much about that. I saw like a little thing, but I don't really know anything about. I was just like, oh, and went on with my day. Okay. So, let us know what you guys think about this. If it was helpful, leave a comment. And also this one, like I feel like with this, a lot of people don't have support. So please put your comments of encouragement. If you want to share any tips that helped you quit or helped you in your experience, like please put those in the comments because it will for sure help other people who are like, I need as much advice as I can get and as much support as I can get. Definitely like the video. Jacqueline also has a YouTube channel. Is it just at Luxem Babe? Is that the channel name?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'll tag it below so you guys can follow her there as well and tap into all of her magic. Is there anything else you want to share about how people can follow you or work with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Luxembabe. I regularly share like milestones that I've reached in quitting weed. So definitely follow me there. And yeah, I have a lot of guided meditations on my YouTube. So I look forward to connecting with anyone that comes over.
Yeah, and I'll just speak for you, even I don't know if you agree with this or not, but you can also message either of us if you just want to share how the video touched you, if you don't want to share it like publicly. I'm at least available for that. You can email me or message me on Instagram. Um, but yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching and for tuning in with us. And I'm sure Jacqueline will be back again soon for another topic. That's probably going to be totally different. All right, bye guys.
Thank you.